Hi everyone, welcome. I'm preparing to check in on the original red wigglers. These are red wiggler worms that I refer to as my original red wigglers because they're the only worms that I have in my entire population of worms down here in my wormery that I feel like I can actually track back to the very first tray of worms that I began vermicomposting with. So they're kind of special in a way. The stuff I bought down here for them consists largely of different kitchen scraps, and over here I have a yam. My mom gave me this yam a few days ago. I even had to call her to ask, hey, what is that thing you gave me? Is that a yam? I kind of thought I knew what it was, but I wasn't sure because it's not one of those things that I myself eat. And the thing's been in my freezer for quite a few days. It was really tough to cut that thing in half. So as much as I would have liked to have made it into smaller sized chunks, cutting it in half was about the best that I could do so that I could give each system a fair shake at trying yams. So I don't exactly know what to expect when it comes to yams. Hopefully they like it. Now, very often when I finish feeding and I lay down one of these coffee filters right over where we last fed to mark the feeding zone, I usually do it on the very surface, and then later on comes newspaper top coverings, as you can see here. I just sort of forgot the order, or maybe I just forgot to place the feeding zone indicator down first before laying out the top covering newspaper. And I'll tell you, those newspaper bits are pretty far gone at this point, so I'm thinking the best thing for these is just to include it down in the feeding zone as supplementary bedding. And for whatever reason, last time we checked in on these systems, the extent of the bedding we applied was nothing more than perhaps a napkin or something. And I wonder if it could have something to do with, I don't know, it doesn't seem to me like the systems are approaching capacity. I mean, I'll admit that they're kind of heavy, and that's fine because I think that's mainly attestable to a high moisture content, which a system like this, or systems like these 122-day-old systems that have been fed 11 times so far, they're probably best off having a fairly large amount of moisture in them so that the worms feel comfortable being pretty much anywhere in the bins, so that they feel like they could roam freely anywhere and be comfortable. So I'm not exactly sure. I didn't really review the video from last time very thoroughly, so I didn't get all the dialogue in terms of the reasoning that went behind the somewhat skimpy application of bedding. Today I am prepared to once again try to compost away a couple napkins, but I've also got my prepared bedding on the side ready to go too. So if we feel like it's the right thing to do, we'll try to get back to the normal routine of giving them a good bit of bedding to accompany the feeding. I just kind of wonder if it could have had something to do. Usually it's because I feel like I'm approaching the capacity of the system, and by that I just mean coming up to a level where I feel like I'm not allowing myself enough extra space to nudge things around and move stuff here and there and pile stuff up the way I normally do, as you could see me doing here. So I'm not sure. Maybe the material has settled, because I don't really feel like we're in that sort of situation where we're approaching a dangerous point where there would be too much material in the systems, making me nervous about spilling it over the edge. So I think we'll just go back to doing the normal routine of being pretty generous with the bedding. I've got those napkins, but I got my prepared bedding, so yeah, I think we'll just do what we normally do and be generous. So here we've got half of a mango seeds husk, and the other half is right here. And then this is a pumpkin stem. This one's pretty recognizable. This one might not have been, but that's what that is. And if I'm not mistaken, bin number 2 over here actually had 2 pumpkin stems floating around in it. To tell you the truth, I don't really remember the history behind the pumpkin stems. And very often when I put pumpkin stems into systems, my tendency is to not want to mess with them or help with their breakdown, because kind of out of curiosity, I just want to see what it takes for a worm bin to break one down without any help. But I've done so many over the years that I've kind of taken on a new point of view when it comes to composting the pumpkin stems, and I guess that point of view is that in most cases I'm prepared to start helping the pumpkin stems with the breakdown process by fragmenting them whenever I can. And as you can see, some of these chunks of pumpkin stem are breaking apart quite readily. This one allowed me to chip off a bunch of pieces, and then there was this other fragment that I found which I was able to break up into probably small enough pieces that I might not even recognize it as pumpkin stem anymore. This one, on the other hand, I think is perhaps a little bit newer and might be a little bit more resistant to breakdown. I mean, not breakdown, but me breaking it at this point, so it might just need a little bit more time. But let's press on. You can see there's a good many worms that are hanging out down in the feeding zone of bin number 2 over here. The stuff we gave them last time, which was only 10 days ago, was radish leaves. And radish leaves, I don't know if you ever had radish leaves laying around the house. Even if they're just sitting around, they seem like they're just in the process of breaking down. Even maybe when you bring them home from the store, I mean, they are just very prone to breaking down, or at least so it seems to me. Especially when you do what I do to prepare foods, to put them into the worm bins, which is to freeze them. So those frozen pieces of radish leaves that we fed last time 10 days ago, I was anticipating that they'd be gone within a couple days, so I'm sure that stuff's been history for many days now. And it's mainly because of that fairly lightweight feeding of radish leaves that we gave them last time that I thought that only 10 days, coming back today after only 10 days, would be a good idea. So let's see, I've also got, look at all that mold growing in there. Alright, interesting. Usually I put the coffee away a little bit drier than this stuff, but this stuff I guess I put into the carton a little bit more damp, so it's got a whole bunch of mold growing on it. And that's stuff that the worms are going to appreciate. And now I think we can come in with this interesting feeding. I don't know what to expect. Have you ever fed a yam to your worm bins? I'm sure many people have. And to tell you the truth, I've probably seen videos where people have fed yam, but then again, a lot of times you don't really get to see what the outcome of a feeding was, or how long it took for something to get eaten. So I don't know what to expect, but if you do, if you know what to expect from a yam in a worm bin, then let me know, especially if it's going to be an outcome that I'm not going to consider to be a good one, such as the worms rejecting it or something along those lines. So I believe that the time has come for this paper material here to go into the feeding zone as well as supplementary bedding. So between the repurposed top covering newspaper bits as well as the large luxurious napkins that we put in there, I am starting to feel like we were pretty generous with bedding in here. But there's really no reason to stop there. I've got my prepared bedding on the ready. So once I get done sprinkling in these crushed bits of eggshell, I think we'll come in with at least a handful for each system of this stuff too. And now we've kind of gone polar opposite of the last check-in, where we were really lightweight on the feeding, really lightweight on the bedding application. Today we've kind of gotten back into the normal routine of being fairly generous, so hopefully the worms appreciate that. Let's get things covered back up and we can let the systems get back to work. So I don't have my leafy matter on hand, although it is right behind me on this shelf. But you know, today I figured, why don't we deviate from what I often do, which is to either lay out a piece of newspaper across the top surface or maybe sprinkle leaves out across the top surface. Perhaps this time we'll simply rest out the feeding zone indicators to show where we last fed, keeping with tradition, and we'll keep it simple that way. And tell you the truth, now that I'm fluffing everything up, perhaps that was part of the reason or rationale for me thinking that I should go a little bit easy on the application of bedding. In fact, now that I'm mentioning it, that might have actually been what I wrote into the thumbnail of the last video in terms of consciously withholding, not withholding because we gave them a little bit, but being very sparing with the bedding. Perhaps because now that I'm fluffing things up, I'm seeing that we're definitely coming up to the rim of the container a little bit more than I observed when we first got in here. Perhaps that's just a good sign right there in itself, showing that the worms are actually working the material down and it's collapsing over a fairly short period of time, just the interval between a couple feedings. So perhaps there isn't all that much to worry about as far as capacity. But whatever, we were pretty generous. We gave them a good bit of bedding down there in the feeding zone. That in itself could also be a contributing factor as to why it seems like we're approaching the rim. So either way, I like the idea of just sort of adapting to whatever conditions are present at the moment. So I think we've made the right sequence of choices here. Hopefully you agree. All right, everyone, that's it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.